everyone, and we're live. You're tuning into the Cosmic Children podcast. I'm your host, Kevin, and today I have an interesting individual in the studio with me. So, Zac, could you please introduce yourself, and could you please tell the listeners, for those who might not know who you are, could you please tell them what you do, and how would you describe it?
Okay, hi, I'm Zac, and I think you're right. I don't think a lot of people know about me, so that's why I had to preface this. So, my name is Zac, and I'm a photographer, and I'm based here in Singapore. So, primarily, I'm an image maker, right? But I think I also work in a creative agency, and then that's where I helm the role as a creative producer.
Yep.
So over there, I see things from end to end, start with the brief, ideating, all the way until, if we have to shoot, we shoot. If we do post, we do post. So that's me.
Yep. So there seems to be a distinction between photographer and producer. Do you see it that way? Was it always very clear, or are they more one and the same?
I think I've never really understood what producer.
It feels like a catch-all, isn't it?
Right. I mean, you watch films and then you say produced by, but I never know what these guys do.
Yeah.
So I think until I step into the industry and I start to learn that, they are the people that they manage a lot of different things, the logistics and all that. And I definitely don't think it's as creative as, say, a photographer. So that's probably more the technical, the not so romantic side of things. Whereas when you're taking a role as a photographer, you're kind of just creating art, right? So I think it's definitely different, but I enjoy both of that thing. So it's fine.
Is it something that you would have to be a good producer to be a good photographer and vice versa? Is it something like that? Because it feels like it feeds into one another. Yeah,
that's actually a very good way of saying it. I think if you're working alone as a photographer, if you're, say, freelancing or you're just navigating through this industry by yourself, you kind of have to know how to produce. You have to know who to, when you get a brief, who do you want on board with you to kind of carry out a project. So I think, you do have to be a good producer. And I think I was guilty of that because I wasn't really open to the idea of like working with a team before I kind of started working. And so back then when I had a job or any gigs, I kind of want to take it all to myself because I'm comfortable working alone, right? But not until very recently, I think over the last 1 or 2 years, I realized the importance of gathering the right team and just kind of producing the shoot. I guess you kind of have to let things go a little bit sometimes. And
So it's I find it quite interesting because I would imagine as a photographer, it's mostly a solo endeavor, especially if you are going out, you're taking the camera and you're shooting it by yourself. But conversely, as a producer, you have to get a team, you have to work with people, you have to communicate with them, you have to communicate your ideas with them. Is it, did it come naturally to you to be able to, I guess, rope in the right people, communicate, I guess, your particular vision and getting everybody on the same page to execute this shoot within X amount of time? Because God knows that you guys are always fighting against time. You guys are always fighting against daylight and all these other variables.
Yeah, I think because every minute it's money, right? That's what they always say, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's very true. So I think that's when you kind of have to know whether you're shooting for fun or whether you're doing like actual commercial works or commissioned works. So if you're shooting for fun, then by all means, right? If you want to do it by yourself, do it by yourself. But I think the moment you kind of get paid to do something and it becomes a job technically, and that's where you want to just cover all grounds. And I think being by yourself, you can only do so much, right? And there are probably times where you miss things out and all that. So it's good to have people to kind of just come and cover up for you and cover your ass, basically. So I think about getting people on the same page, I kind of dance around with the idea of that because I think I let people know what I have in mind, but I really embrace whatever interpretations they have or whatever ideas they have. So I'm pretty flexible when it comes to that because I don't want it to be a case where like I'm the dictator, hey, this is what I want. I want the light to be here. So I like it when I work with people and then they just kind of throw things at me. And that's when you try new things, right? Because if you only do what you know, then you don't really explore what you don't know.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were to hypothesize, because if you look at some of, let's say, some of the greatest films ever made, you will hear stories of how a particular director is on set and how they want certain things to be. If you were to hypothesize, why is it that there is this sense that as a creator or as an artist, you kind of have to be very dictatorial and less democratic in a sense where you are open to other people's like vision and everything. There is this like, I guess, romanticization of, this vision, everybody is contributing to it, but it can only be so, it's very restrictive and narrow in a sense. Yeah, because you're accomplishing, let's say, the head photographer's vision, you're accomplishing, let's say, the director's vision.
Oh, I think then there comes the point where, I know I say that, it's good to have people kind of throwing ideas at you and, as a team, you figure things out together. But I think if you helm the role as the head photographer or basically the person that's in charge of the job, then you kind of have to know where to kind of draw the line, right? Like, when people are suggesting things that are, just kind of going out of what you had in mind, then you just kind of direct them a little bit, pull it back. And thankfully, I don't work in such a big crew like film industry and all that. I usually work around maximum 3 to 4 people around me when I'm doing photo shoots, max. So I try to keep it as small as I can because I think when you're shooting, it's always better to keep the size smaller. I mean, if I'm doing portraits or kind of more intimate things. Yeah, but say if you're doing like product stuff and all that, then it's okay to have a bigger crew. And I think that's when you kind of have to be very sure of what you want, which is still something I'm trying to kind of learn as I go as well. Because it's very easy to be carried away with what other people are throwing at you. And so, the hard part is finding what's your identity or what's your style and then just kind of sticking to it.
I was going to ask, like, even within a team of 3 to 4, that means you have 3 other people with their own perspective and their own take on this particular subject. Even if it's like a commercial or like a personal project, it's still 3 different unique perspectives. So I was going to ask, what has helped you, I guess, ground your particular perspective?
Wow. I think that I know there are people that I really look up to, and then there are these photographers that I kind of I really enjoy their works. And then, although I don't really submit to the idea of like just imitation or copying, but I do kind of want to draw references and put things together and just kind of call it my own line. And that's the way things are nowadays as well. So when it comes to managing all the different perspectives, I think I use that kind of reference point that I mentioned earlier as my like kind of marking rubrics. So if I hit these checkpoints, then it's fine. But when people are kind of suggesting things that are too different or when their perspectives are very different from mine, then I don't think we will be working together in the first place. So I think that's the important part, right? Just picking the right team, finding the right people for the job. And by right people, I don't mean the best in the field, right? It could be just people that are starting out or I mean, they have the fresh ideas. So I think as long as the team is right, I'm actually quite open to all their ideas. Because I feel that that's part of the job, like knowing how to fuse ideas and people's perspectives, and then it becomes a group project and like a collective outcome. So
before we move into talking about photography, you mentioned about rubrics. You mentioned about marking rubrics. Are you talking about more the technicalities of photography, like or the lighting, the composition, or is it something more intangible? Like you just see their work and okay, they might not know what they're doing, but you just sense something that okay, maybe you can work together, you can figure something out. So I'm just curious to know, like, is it more technical? Like you see someone's, the lighting's really on point, but maybe not the composition, but you see someone else's, the composition's on point, and blah blah blah.
Well, I think different roles, right? There's different way to kind of not really judge it, but there's different ways to, I guess judge it, right? So, I mean, when you're working with people that are doing lights, for sure. And I think they have to be a bit more technical because with lighting, you kind of have to calculate it. You kind of have to know what's the intensity, what's the color temperature, which angle do you want the light to come in from, how do you bounce it, how do you soften it and all that. So that's a bit more technical. But when it comes to, say, art or styling, I think I'm a lot more flexible with that. Like, I just let it I just let myself feel and I allow myself to just kind of see the image for what it is. Like, does it feel right to you? And if it does, then, you know, I'll just put a full stop there. Like, I don't really try to harp on details too much because I feel that it's just counterintuitive. Like, it's just going to take a lot of time to perfect things and all that. So when, in an instance of like art and all that, I allow myself to just be a bit more free. And but when it comes to like camera stuff and your lighting stuff, then you have to be a bit more technical. Yeah, that's what I think. Okay,
and I think that's a good jumping off point into your role as a photographer. So before we move on, do you identify as a photographer? So let's say if someone say you're a photographer, do you identify as that?
Wow.
I ask because let's say in the illustration world, there's so many different terms. Oh, you have illustrator, you have an artist. The artist and the illustrator, it comes pretty loaded. So I'm curious to know what is your relationship like with the word photographer? Yeah.
Okay. I mean, the purist in me wants to say that that the photographer is just a term, right? Like in which we label ourselves. I mean, illustrator, doctor, lawyer, photographer. So that's what I am. But I think essentially, I like you said, I enjoy making art, and I studied in an art school before. So that's why I kind of appreciate, you know, like language, like visual language or just things in general. So yeah, I do identify by the term photographer, but I do think that there's still a little like boy in me that just wants to just create for fun and
Do you think it's big enough for your creative ambition?
You mean the term?
Yeah. Or is it too small?
I do think it's a little limiting sometimes. Right? Because if you think about it, essentially what we're trying to do is to create images, but it could be moving, it could be still, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to kind of tell the story that I have in mind. So I don't really like it when the term photographer comes to play, right? Because that's when you're kind of, people will go, oh, so you just take pictures, right? But I can do more than that, and I would love to do more than that if the situation allows me to. If the context is right, then I'll just do it. So even say, when I was working on a project for, I think like migrant workers and all that, I thought of, you know, it started out being like a photography project, like photo documentary and all that. But as I just kind of journeyed through that project, I realized that, hey, you know, if I make a video here, it might be quite fun. It might be able to tell the story a little bit more, and it's a lot more authentic. So I just followed my heart and went for it. So yeah, but at work, I'm just a photographer.
What a way to end that sentence. So, I am curious to know what your relationship is with the medium. I ask because when I was doing particular research for this episode, people have very romantic definitions of their relationship with the medium. I think some describe it as a means of conversation with people. Others describe it as escaping, or it gives them a very unique lens of how to see the world. I'm curious to know what yours is today and how has that changed across the years?
Today, I think that's actually a very good question, because I think I was just having a conversation with my friend recently, and we were just talking about just art and film and photography in general. And he was just saying, I mean, I've always adopted a more authentic approach. So I enjoy things that are very real, like just very live kind of things. And then he was just saying, but if life is really so tough, then why not just create something that's out of this world, right? So I resonate with that, but that's not me. So yeah, my relationship right now, I feel that it's still quite true to what it was when I first started. I enjoy taking pictures, and I think there's nothing much more than that, other than the fact that it has gotten a lot more less romantic. Right? Because when you first started out, everything's very intuitive. You just take images that feels right to you. It feels fun. I remember my very core memory is me just walking down Haji Lane, not knowing what I was doing, with a very small camera that I have no idea how it ended up in my hands, but I was just taking pictures of flowers or like murals, and that's fun. So I still do that once in a while, but yeah, now you just have to grow up and just kind of put food on the table, and you do things sometimes that you don't really enjoy doing, but that's what that pays, right? So yeah.
Do you think it's about finding the balance between putting food on the table, getting paid well or getting paid reasonably for your profession and your talent, while trying to balance the intuitiveness of just walking down the street and snapping photos without any care in the world. Because I would imagine, like in a profession where I think you mentioned where there's a client and you are shooting just to serve a particular purpose. But the flip side of that is you mentioned walking down the street and just taking photos for the sake of taking photos. There is no care about the lighting. There is no concern about, oh, this is to sell a product, this is to sell something, because there is no meaning to it. And I guess in a sense that because there's no meaning to it, you are able to ascribe your own meaning to it. Do you think it's about finding that balance?
Definitely, right? I think in the ideal world and scenario, we want the yin and yang balance, Everything has to be balanced.
Yep.
But sadly, okay, if I could just take pictures for fun, like walk in the streets and take photos and people wants to buy them for some reason, and then, I become a millionaire, then okay lah, then I think that's the best case scenario. But I think it's good that I do what I do at work, because then when I'm actually out shooting for myself, it becomes a lot more fun. So
interesting.
So without that kind of like that, I wouldn't say downside, but without that tougher photography endeavor, I think the sweet part of it wouldn't taste as sweet.
It's like a counterbalance, lah.
Right, yeah. And yeah, so I think it's interesting though, because when I first started out taking photos, I honestly wasn't thinking much, right? Like I wouldn't imagine myself to be doing that after so many years. And I would almost describe the relationship to be kind of like your comfort food or your childhood best friend, right?
Okay.
Because I've tried to pick up a lot of things along the way. Like as I'm growing up, I tried to skate. I tried to learn the guitar, so I just recently bought a guitar, but it's just still in my room, and I still can't even stretch my fingers enough.
You can play the open chords?
No, I can't even do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think, but photography is that one thing that I always go back to.
Yep.
It's like a good play of Cai Fan, right? So yeah, you can never go wrong. So I think that's what I'm comfortable with. But what I really love about that medium is that even though I'm very comfortable doing that, there are still times where it puts me outside of my comfort zone. Right? Like when it comes to projects and all that, then you kind of have to force yourself to think deeper or wider and all that. So yeah.
So I'm curious to know, do you remember what is your earliest memory of photography or pictures? Was it something your parents showed you, or they introduced you to the camera, or was it something you picked up in school and you gradually cultivated, I guess, the interest in it? Do you remember that first or that earliest memory?
I don't think I can remember the very beginning, but I do remember myself being like 17 years old or 16 maybe, and I was just surfing this forum called Club Snap. I'm not sure whether you've heard.
Is it like a local photography forum?
It's just a local photography forum. So people sell cameras, people talk about technical stuff.
Before Carousel, I assume.
Yes, before Carousel. And also I think Instagram was already there, but it wasn't like this Instagram that we know today. There wasn't that, one ad after two posts kind of Instagram yet. Like people were just posting pictures of their dogs and, like they stepped the filter and all that shit. But yeah, so that's when Instagram wasn't really thriving, and I was just on Club Snap almost every day. Like I remember myself just kind of refreshing the page with that 2 hours I have daily on my computer. Yeah. And I just look at people taking pictures of like HDB. And then they have the long exposures of like car trails and all that. And I was like, wow, that's damn exciting, man. Like there's nothing like what my eye sees, right? So I love the idea of kind of manipulating what you kind of know, but at the same time, you're just kind of giving it a little bit of a twist, right? So it's what I see every day in HDBs, but right now there's like cars moving and then there's trails and wow, I was like, that's damn cool, man. So I wanted to get a camera, and that's how it started.
So how do you go from that to getting your first camera and taking your first photo?
So the very first camera, it was a mixture of, I think my dad had a big part in that. So he spotted that I kind of enjoyed this thing a lot. So I was just taking pictures with my phone a lot, right? Yeah. I think it was iPhone 3G or 4 back then. Yeah, so that's the dinosaur times. Yeah. So I took so I took a lot of pictures with those like phones, and I'm always shooting when it's like family events and all that. I would just post it on my Facebook for fun, and I think he recognized that and he saw that, and he volunteered to get me something. So I just started taking a lot of photos with it. I remember myself when I got my first camera, it was a Nikon D3100, like some kind of like it makes a very weird sound when you take pictures.
It sounds like an alien language.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
It's a super mechanical kind of sounding camera, and I brought it. So I was by myself. I brought it up to the overhead bridge very near my house because that's the first thing I wanted to try. Like, I have a tripod now, a cheap plasticky tripod. I just want to take pictures of cars moving. Wow, when I first saw that image, like on my LCD, I was like, damn, so I can actually do what other people are doing, and that's really damn cool. So that just kind of escalated and I just kept doing that, and I started putting works on Instagram for fun and met a lot of friends after that. So
props to Mr. Tan for getting the camera.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think he's a very frugal person, but when it comes to his kids and all, when he spots that potential, I think he just goes for it. And it's very nice.
Yeah. So when you were sharing that, I was expecting you to say, I took my first photo and I realized I was super talented at it and the rest was easy. So I'm curious to know, between that first photo, and I'm sure you've taken thousands since, how was the process like? Was it easy for you? Like, was it difficult? Like, because it's an interesting question and I'm curious to know the answer because with regards to creative pursuits, there seems to be no end in sight.
Yeah.
Or there can be no end in sight. It ends when I guess you stop pursuing it. Yeah. So I'm curious to know, what has your journey been like pursuing, I guess, this particular medium of photography from that first click? And I mean, you realizing, maybe this is bad, this is good. I want to do this more, I want to shoot more of this. Yeah.
I think I can safely say that there's like different phases and eras of my like photography journey or whatever you call it.
Yep.
So there was that phase where I started taking photos for fun and I put it on Instagram. I met a lot of friends. And what we did was, me and all the people that I shoot with, including Anton or my other clique of friends, we just walked around town together quite aimlessly, just taking pictures for fun. And I did that for a good like 3 to 4 years actually. And then I think Instagram kind of popped off then. That was the very like, you go to the rooftop and then you take nightscapes of Singapore kind of era. And I really I really enjoyed that. But I think after I enlisted and after I kind of went to art school for my university for my degree, right, I kind of opened my eyes a little bit. Because I remember one lecturer in school. So I wouldn't say his name, but he's a great artist. And then I remember myself feeling very confident about my works back then because that was the very Instagram kind of photos, right? So I kind of showed him all of my works, my portfolio of works. And then he just went, I think he could sense that I'm a little bit like, I wouldn't say cocky, but very proud. So he was like, do you actually think these are great? I was like,
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, to me it was great at that point in time. So then I think he didn't give me a conclusion, but what I brought home that day was, okay, am I actually making good works? Right? Or does my work just end with Instagram? And that's a very sad thing, I think. So I started to read up a lot more about photography in general, and then I started finding people that I really resonate with. Like there's a lot of photographers like Rinko Kawashi or Alex Soft and all that. So these are names that I think they create really for themselves. And I realized that I wasn't really doing that. Like a big part of my endeavor, I was just shooting my friends and then putting it on Instagram, and then we're like, I mean, I'm lying if I'm saying I don't care about the likes, because back then that's all it was about. So I was very caught up with that, and thankfully that lecturer and that university experience kind of opened up my eyes a little bit. So I started to understand what photography really is. It's actually just about yourself. You just take images that you feel is right. I choose to take a lot of very intimate things. So there are a lot of things that I don't share online, like my pictures of my family. And yeah, I think at the core of it, that's what photography is to me right now compared to back then, because it was a lot about adrenaline and fun and, what do you call it? Like filters and just that blue and teal and tones and all that. But now it's no longer about it. It's just about the feeling of, I don't know, like intimacy with the medium.
Does the idea of memories, does it factor into that? Because I would imagine the earliest concept of what photography is and taking an image is to treasure that moment in time, is to treasure that memory. So I'm curious to know, does it factor into, I guess, how you relate to the medium?
For sure. I think, you know that saying where people say, oh, they just want to freeze a moment in time and all that. And I think that's very accurate. And I recently came across a saying with one of my friend Venus. So she was saying that, you know, a camera is basically a time machine, right? You're essentially just stopping a moment in time.
Yep.
And I really like the idea of that because it sounds very
sexy,
right? Like, oh wow, it's a bloody time machine. People are just trying to invent one, but I have one in my hand. So yeah, I really like the idea of that. And I think that's the best part of photography. Like when you're looking back in time and then you're looking back, oh wow, so this happened and that happened. And truth to be told, I have no idea what happened like last week. So that's why I really treasure images. Yeah, they just tell a lot of stories. And I think the best part of it is you get to reflect on things that happened before. And that's the best part for me.
Yeah. So in the wide toolkit of what a photographer wields, I'm curious to know, which of them do you like to use?
Toolkit as in like,
you could either interpret as technical or I guess more abstract, meaning or the composition or the subjects or the elements.
Gotcha.
There's quite a bit from how you want to frame certain things, how you want to leave certain things out. Yeah. What do you enjoy manipulating or using?
I think I like the idea of nostalgia a lot. Like, I don't really know whether I apply that to my work just yet, but I think the idea of toying with what people already know and then just representing it in a different way, that sticks with me a lot. Yeah. So, but if you're talking very technical stuff, I do love it when an image is not showing too much. I don't know whether that makes sense.
What do you mean by that?
Like, I love it when images are shot in a very tight focal length, if I'm going technical, like, and I love the compression, and I love it when I get to imagine what's outside of the frame, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah,
right.
Yep.
So, and that's exactly the reason why I enjoy photography more than film. Like, if you are to compare, because I was just having this conversation as well, and I think there's no right or wrong, but sometimes I feel that a film or video or movie kind of shows you a little bit too much, and I would like to retain a little bit of that, you know, like wonder, right? Like, oh, so I mean, I like it when things are up to my own interpretation. So that's why when I shoot, I try to leave a little bit of that as well, just for my audience to think and just appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't like it when things are too obvious, if that makes sense.
Yeah, or things are when everything is presented nicely for you, because it's not as mysterious and
it feels like a catalog.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
So, but then again, so if you are actually working, then that's what you have to do, right? Like, I think that's the hardest part, because when you are shooting for fun, and you know, when I first started out, things were very natural. It was very authentic. Like, there wasn't much, you know, set up for an image. Whereas now, you kind of have to build things, and you are actually just creating your own version of a story, or you're creating your own version of a set, and then you're just shooting it and showing it out. Yep. So, no right or wrong, you just have to do both.
Yep.
If you can, and if I can. So, yeah.
Would you adopt, I guess, different styles of shooting or different, I guess, mentalities or approaches with regards to the two setups you have in mind, or the two setups that you just mentioned? Like approaching, let's say, a production shoot where everything has to be built up and then it tears down, as compared to, I think, something a lot more natural where it is what it is, and you're able to be a lot more expressive and, I guess, have a lot more artistic vision with it.
Yeah. I think if I have a choice, I would really love to do it that way, where I get that leeway to just artistically express what I would imagine a shoot to be like. But I think more often than not, I have to helm the role of a designer / photographer. So I always, because sometimes I call myself a designer as well, because I think that's what I studied in school.
Yeah. And
truth to be told, I think shooting commercially and all that, you're kind of designing an experience, and and photos, at the end of the day, they are images, right? And it could be similar to illustrations as well. You're just kind of trying to composite an image. So when I'm helming that role, I try to be as objective as possible. Like I try and make sure that I check all the boxes when it comes to client things and all that. But if by chance, if I get any fun projects or briefs where it's like, oh, I'm paying you, but you get to do whatever you want. And I think that would be the best project ever. So far, I don't think that has really happened yet, but yeah, I'm hopeful. Maybe one day it'll come.
Yeah. So the idea of doing anything you want, does it feel like freedom to you, or does it feel more paralyzing? Because there are some, I guess, creature comforts with regards to a brief. You know intrinsically not to stray too far because there are guidelines basically. And in the creative sense where anything is possible, you can create anything you want, that could be paralyzing because you don't know how to take the first step. Yeah. So I'm curious to know, like, doing anything you want, have you had experiences where I guess, it is amazing? Or have you had experiences where I guess, it's paralyzing because you don't know how to start?
I think, like I said, I haven't got a chance to work on a project like that gave me so much freedom yet. Yeah, but I would imagine that even if I'm given a chance, I would at least require, I wouldn't say a proper brief, but at least some kind of theme or keywords, or I don't know, like just a starting point for me. And then from there, I can just kind of diverge and then before I converge again to my ideas and all that. So yeah, but I would imagine it to be quite paralyzing if I'm really doing it. Then
where do you start?
Then what will you be paying me for, right? what are we actually doing? So yeah, that would be paralyzing. But so I think any form of starting point would be good. Okay.
So not a total purist, at least have some sort of conversation, like drop you off somewhere and then go from there.
Yeah, I think that kind of exploration kind of projects would be great for my own personal kind of stuff. So, I mean, I'm still trying to build a series of images of just my life at home or like my family and all that. I don't know whether they'll ever see the light of day, but I really like the idea of a body of work now as compared to before. I think this is also a good point. When I was starting out taking pictures back then, it was really about one single image. It wasn't really about how cohesive they could be or how they could be viewed as a whole or separately. And I think just reading up on other photographers and all that, I realized that, wow, by kind of arranging and editing a series of images or sequencing or curating, I think that's also the thing that sets your work apart from other people, right? Like,
also,
I think, okay, so imagine images in a book, right?
Yes.
In the form of a book.
Yep.
The way you arrange them from start to end, I think they could tell a story. It could be sequential or it could not be. It could just be completely random, but that's also how you want your audience to interpret the works. So I think everything is by design, and that's when the role of a designer kind of comes in. Yeah, so yeah, but back then it wasn't that complicated. It was just take a photo, edit, put it in the Lightroom, slap a filter, slap a preset, up it goes on Instagram. Wait for likes, and I'm happy. Really, really, like if I'm being brutally honest, like that's what it was back then. I can say for myself, I don't know about other people, but so that's how it was. But I'm glad that there was a phase and it's behind me.
So for better or worse, you got, I guess, 2 layers deeper into the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. And it's a hole that I didn't know I was in. If that makes sense. Until that one lecturer just kind of give me a tight slap. Like a virtual slap.
But was it... So, taking back to that particular experience, was it, I guess, confronting to, I guess, your sense of self? Because you mentioned that you were doing everything and you thought you were good.
Yeah.
But suddenly this one guy who probably might not even remember the conversation and just throw it back to you. And I guess it forced you to, I guess, look into the metaphorical mirror. Like, what am I actually doing this for?
Yeah, I think I remember hearing that and thinking, wow, what do you know, man?
Yep.
Right? I mean, that's a very natural response. But I think, okay, so my school was in Tampines and I live very, very far north.
Yep.
So on the bus back home, after hearing that
Fuming.
line, well, that was like an hour of me just thinking, oh, maybe he's right. Maybe I'm actually not that great after all. And I think that's a very good lesson, right? I think I don't think I was cocky, but I was just very confident of my works. Like I know that there are people that enjoy it, people that likes it, and I really thrive on that, and I kind of build myself on that lah. But when someone comes and tell you that, oh, actually, your works are very amateurish, and if you think it's good, you think again. It's like, wow. And he asked me questions like, do you know, like, I don't know, this photographer, that like this guy, that guy, or so, I don't really know all these people, and maybe I should just start to read a little bit more. And that's when another hole opened, and I just jumped right in.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned that this is your experience, because I could imagine things playing out very differently. Like you being confronted and you, I guess, just dropping it because perhaps, you really do suck at it. Yeah.
Like, wow, that's painful, but
that's just always an option. Like who's to say what is it about, I guess, your intrinsic qualities that made you want to, okay, let's try this again. Let's pursue this even further, even though you can't see, I guess, your future end, right now. Yeah. Not even the end. Assuming you don't have any like powers where you can see into the future. Back then, you wouldn't know where you are today. You would have no idea. You would just be, okay, you feeling these feelings, anger, fuming, maybe because your ego is a little bit bruised, and you have to figure out, okay, I'm going to look at these people, I have to watch these videos, I have to slowly crawl my way through the darkness, and maybe I might find a new love for it again.
Wow. I think it was definitely hard to swallow, right? I mean, imagine yourself doing something for like, I say, 4 to 5 years and thinking, oh wow, okay, actually I'm not bad at this. And then if someone comes along and tell you that, I think the natural response would be, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And
it's like dismissive.
Yeah, right. And you kind of, it's just selective hearing, and you just choose to hear the nice things. But thankfully, I think that one bus ride home, I kind of sorted out my thoughts, and then I started feeling curious about what he's trying to say, right? Because I don't think he was just telling me that I suck. He wanted me to be more. I feel. I mean, that's the role of a teacher, right? So, and I didn't want to disappoint. I think I've always wanted to just do well in school, but more importantly, I really wanted to know what kind of person I would graduate this place being lah. And you definitely want to be better than when you join a school, right? I mean, essentially.
Hopefully. I mean, that is not a given. But hopefully.
No, but imagine if I'm that sucker that just, hey, you don't know what you're saying, and I could very well be the same person as when I first joined. So I think I decided to just kind of read up a lot more about like people that are influential in their own time and all that. And I think looking at works from actual photographers really humbled me, because I think, like say a portrait of a person, it could be as, I don't know whether you've seen that image, that National Geographic picture of that girl with the
Show me later.
Yeah. So basically, it's a very simple portrait, but people buy the image like it's so special. And to me, I was like, why? Like, what's the factor that got people into it, right? And I started to realize that it's actually not about the colors of the picture or what kind of filter you're using and all that. It's just the core and the intimacy that you will feel from an image. And then I started to understand, maybe it's not really about just the aesthetics. It's also about the research, like before you get to shoot, like what kind of work do you do? And then when you're actually shooting, I think that's only 10% of the work, or like 20% of the work. So I started to understand that photography is not really just about taking pictures. There's a lot more to it than that. Then that's why I say humbled, because I didn't really know anything about that. Like I didn't do research when I'm taking pictures of HDBs or like Marina Bay Sands, right? But when I'm in school, I had to back my work with a lot of research, and that's when I learned that, okay, wow, even taking pictures, you need to know what you're doing, and you need to know why you're doing it. And that's important.
Do you think that this amount of pre-production work going to a photo, or even like the the thoughts and ideas you have, because you use the words like intimacy to elaborate or to explain or to talk about a photograph, which is just a portrait. It's a very personal read of it, and most people and some people might not be able to see it. Some people see different things. So I'm curious to know if having, I guess, so much conceptions and ideations and even like abstract, I'm thinking about this one particular thing or thinking about how to shoot, does it run in conflict with the idea of just taking up a camera and shooting? Because it sounds like it might. Yeah, because it's like on one hand you have I guess your history as a photographer, your history as an image maker of the journey you've had, whether you're conscious or unconscious of or aware of it. But on the other hand, you're just taking a camera, putting in a raw film, taking 24 shots. That's it. There isn't as much thought put into it. Or do you feel that it's indistinguishable because ultimately it's you pulling the trigger, viewing things, viewing through the lens finder? Yeah.
No, I definitely think that you need a lot of planning and research, I think, but that only brings you to the starting point. And then that's where I allow myself to just go a little bit crazy or just allow myself to feel. When I'm really working by myself, I don't really think too much about the research I've done. Okay, so the research is just to lead me to the start.
Yep.
I want to go into something knowing at least some, like, I need to enter or kind of start on a project knowing enough about it first. So that's the way I work. Like, be it a photo documentary or even say the migrant workers one that I did.
Yep.
I just don't want to go in clueless because, you know, you could be offending people.
Yep.
Yeah, so just want to be safe. But once I start, I just kind of let my mind wander off and I just let things happen. And I think you also kind of want to be more open to embracing like spontaneous things, right? I think if everything's so calculated, then might as well just shoot it in the studio and just do it, right? Yeah, which is not wrong. So I think allowing yourself to just kind of fall in love with like things that happens naturally, I think that's also an important part of being a photographer. I think I read this line recently: to be a photographer, you just have to fall in love with things, right? Like just life in general. Like then a flower becomes more than a flower, a cup becomes more than just a cup, and you kind of start to just find romantic ways to look at things, and then you just compose the image. And then people might not see that way, but the important thing is you felt that way when you were taking the image, and then when you look back, that would still resonate with you. Yeah.
So throughout this conversation, we've been talking about, I guess, feeling a certain way and feeling your way through like an image. And we've talked about, I guess, curiosity. And it's interesting because these are traits hopefully one cultivates through life. It's not something like you go to school for. You know, you go to school to learn a quote unquote a technical skill, but hopefully you pick up these things along the way and while exploring, while doing a particular skill. So I'm curious to know, what do you think is your strongest trait or your strongest, I guess, skill as a photographer?
I think it would be I wouldn't say power, but that...
Power?
No. Okay, maybe that's a bad word.
Strength?
I think, no, it's just the desire to find out more about people and to just listen to people's stories. And I just kind of want to tell it if I may. But if I don't get to hear stories, I like to observe and then kind of just construct my own and then just just present it. So yeah, I would say the power of observing.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's very crucial. And I think just being a people person, like just knowing like the situation you're in and just being a people watcher. And yeah, I think that's a very good trait to have as a photographer. But if you're talking commercially, then I have no idea whether that would be a good use. Right. Yeah, but
is it something that you've always had? Or is it something cultivated across the years?
Wow. I would say, might be a bit thick skin, but I think I've always had a way with people, like be it like on the streets. Like I have no trouble like going up to a random person and just like striking a conversation and just talking. But I recently did a test and I found out that I'm an introvert, so I have no idea how these things work and connect. But I think that's what I feel I'm strong at. Like I'm good at making people feel comfortable when I'm shooting them. And I think that's very important because then people will let their guard down and you can just kind of connect with them. And the images actually show up different, I feel.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Gotcha. So to tee off from that, I'm curious to know, what do you think goes into a good photograph?
Whoa.
What, in your opinion? Yeah.
No, that's a tough one.
Or is the question flawed? There is no good or bad photograph. Yeah.
I think it might be flawed to a certain extent because it's very subjective, right?
Yes.
Like art, like how art is. And to me, what's good is if it allows me to reflect on myself. So when I see a good piece of work or image or commercial work, like if it kind of makes me think a little deeper or just makes me question about, wow, like why did the person decide to pull the trigger here, like there and then? Or why, if I'm going technical, like why did he decide to light it this way? So I think if I have these questions, then naturally I think that that's a good image because it's something that I wouldn't have thought about doing. So I think that's my way of kind of categorizing something as good, or I wouldn't say bad, but things that I've already seen before. So yeah, those would be those things that you've seen, you kind of don't really want to repeat them. Yeah, ideally you do things that are novel, but to be honest, novelty is very rare these days as well. Yeah, so yeah,
so
if it makes me question, it's good.
What was the last thing you saw that kind of sparked that I guess the curiosity, like you mentioned?
The last thing I saw.
Do you remember?
I remember. There's this very young photographer. I think maybe a few years younger than me, or maybe around my age. I have no idea. But his name is Emil Duck. So he's a winner of this Leica Oscar Banach Award. So it's this like photography competition, and it's very prestigious. And and he's the winner for the young, like, so there's like two spectrums. There's the adults one, and then there's the younger one. So he's a winner for that. And I saw the amount of work that he put into his images, and I think he was documenting like the Gulag and things like that, and the Road of Bones. I think that's what his work is titled. Don't quote me. But when I saw the images, it made me feel like strange. Like I felt that I was in that exact place where he was shooting somehow. And as I said, I like it when images don't show me too much. So I really started to think like, oh wow, like what could be the rest of the space look like, or what would the space smell like, and what would I hear if I'm there? So I think when I see something like that, I kind of want to allow other people to feel the same way when they see my works. And unfortunately, I don't think I've reached that phase yet, but it's a work in progress. But the captivating thing about Emil's work is that there's a lot of research, and it's, well, I just can't put into words how the images make me feel, because it's very simple looking. It looks like you could just take it with a phone, almost. I mean, I'm not trying to insult him, but it's the way he sequences it and kind of puts it together, and it's the way he choose, like, okay, this is the one image that I'm going to use, and this is the next one that's going to follow. I think that's very intentional, and I think that's the part where you have to be intentional as a photographer, because it's very easy to just throw the whole body of work and then just not think too much about it. But if you design the experience, and if people are able to be receptive to it, then I think that's what makes you a great photographer. Yeah.
So how would you describe your body of work right now?
Right now, I think, wow, it's definitely 80% commercial and things to put food on the table. I mean, I'm living in Singapore, and cost of living is crazy. I need to get a house with my girlfriend, and therefore I need money, and therefore I need to work. So it's definitely a lot more commercial, but I do shoot a lot of things that, as I said, I don't show. And I wouldn't say they're portfolio, because I don't think I'll ever show it to clients and say, hey, this is
for personal consumption.
Yeah, so yeah, it's definitely a lot more commercial now. And I think what I'm trying to balance is, if I'm able to kind of put a little bit of that romantic side of things into commercial work, then that'll be great. But so far, not yet, I think.
Is it a matter of the client understanding it, or is it more it's always oh, you're shooting for this particular purpose to promote this particular purpose, this particular thing, and it's always very straightforward like that. That it leaves no room basically.
I think I think it's almost that, and also when you're actually shooting with so many eyes on you and people just waiting to approve your images and all that on the spot, these things happens and you just kind of lose a little bit of that childlike wonder, like, oh, I want to make this a fun image. It just becomes very objective driven, and then that's where things just become less fun lah. Yeah.
Interesting. So I looked at your portfolio and I looked at your Instagram, and I think in some of the videos it features people very prominently, and it features I think there was this particular copy or rationale that you wrote, like I'm trying to capture the quiet and the mundane. So I'm curious to know why is it important to capture that? What is it about the quiet and the mundane and the normalcy of things? Right? Yeah.
I think when I wrote that line, I remember myself I was putting myself in a state where I could romanticize anything, like just to take images. And I think it's very important for me because, like I told you, I've been very influenced by Instagram photography. I don't even know whether that's what it's called, but I think then I decided, oh wow, like I don't have to take a picture of a nice subject for it to be a great picture. Like if I could make something simple look good in my own terms, then I think I've kind of succeeded in a way. So I think that's the toughest part, right? Like if I have a nice Marina Bay Sands to take a nice picture of, then that would be kind of half the battle won. But let's say if you have a picture of a cup and then what are you going to do with it? So I decided that, okay, that's a way of practice. That's a way of seeing. And I just decided to just give it a go. And I started to just look around a lot at very random things, and then my mom will go, hey, why are you taking a picture of a cup? But that's exactly why I'm taking a picture, because this exact moment where the cup is on the table, where the light hits, it will never theoretically happen again. Yeah, so I just wanted to record that moment down, and yeah, that's it, man. Like it's nothing. I think my mom was just very concerned, like, oh, why is this guy taking? He started out taking pictures of nice buildings and landscapes and seascapes, and now he's just taking pictures of cups. And yeah.
Do you think one day your mom would understand?
Wow, I honestly think she will never understand, and I think it's fine. I don't think she have to understand.
Yeah,
I think it's a very interesting kind of thing, right? Like, I remember making a series of pictures about her. These two have never seen the light of day. So every day at 5:30 p.m, the sun will hit in a specific way into my living room.
Yep.
And because my mom's nocturnal, so she would then wake up at about that timing.
Yep.
And that's when I get her to stand in front of the wall, and I'll just take a picture of her almost every day or bi-weekly. I just collect these images. And I think she didn't understand why I was doing that. She was annoyed, obviously. I mean, you wake up and then you look like shit, and then someone, and then your son comes to you,
point the camera in front of you.
Come, let me take a picture of you. And I did it on film, so I was just kind of fondling with the camera and trying to figure things out. And then she was like, "Are you done? Are you done?"
Yep.
But I think looking back at the pictures, I think I recently showed her some of those images, and I could see her smiling and just trying to think back, when did this actually happen? I didn't even remember it.
Yep.
So I think that's the whole point of taking pictures, right? You just kind of pick your subjects, pick what's important to you, and just stick with it through a period of time. I think that's a practice too, because it's very easy to be distracted. Like today I take a building, tomorrow I take something else. I think if you are sticking to something, then naturally a body of work would kind of surface like a body of work. So
it sounds like the intentionality of why you will want to take that photo is a lot more important than just the different variables to it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because to be honest, back to my mom, she wasn't very happy a lot of time. But I think looking back at the image, she kind of understood a little bit of why I'm doing it, because I think she realized that I might have a longing for that moment, because that moment will pass, and one day I'll be old, I don't know whether she'll be around anymore. And that's when you have these things to look back on. So that's the same for my dad, right? I mean, I don't know whether you've seen it, but I've made a documentary about my dad, and he's an ice cream seller. Very traditional, like tricycle ice cream seller in the streets. Yeah, and I think what got me, okay, so that was actually for a school project, and it was titled Another Singapore. So the very literal way of doing that, I actually thought of just going to, I don't know, like Geylang or like the red light districts to show people the other side of Singapore, which I've also done before. But then I thought that, people know about Ice Cream Man, but do they actually know what they do behind the scenes and all that? So that's theoretically another side of Singapore as well. So I think as I pursued that project and as I kind of completed it, I could see I wouldn't say happiness, but that level of satisfaction that was on my dad's face. And I think creating that project together with him, that's actually quite a fun process, because then you would see that little artist in him. He would be like, oh, later I'll drive the van here, and then you can stop there, and that would be the nice frame. And all that. So I never knew,
cute.
like I never knew that side of him existed. And that's when you kind of collaborate with your father, and then I think that's quite exciting. So the best part of it for me was when I think 2 weeks after the project has finished, like I was kind of moving on to something else already. I could still hear at 10 p.m. or 10:30 p.m. when he's in his room, I could still hear the opening sound of the video of that ice cream bell. So that's the iconic, like the bell sound. So it means that he's actually watching it before he goes to bed. And I was like, oh wow. So what I'm actually doing is kind of important to him. It's important enough to him for him to like look at it before he sleeps. And I do think that by creating images or videos or whatever, you're essentially just freezing that moment.
You're preserving things.
You're allowing yourself to relive that moment again and again and again.
And I think that's on just one level. And I think on another level, because yes, it could be just for a school project. That's the base level. But I think it feels to me like, it's like a very important like bonding between like the father and the son. And I guess in some ways, perhaps he just felt seen. There's this importance of just preserving this particular moment in time, and it's forever preserved until you lose the video file. But it's forever preserved. I think that's so nice. So what I'm curious to know is, do you have a favorite photograph, or do you have a favorite video that you have done? Because while we were talking about taking photos of the cup and everything, I think of how, let's say, you can be an award-winning photographer. You can take the mountains and you can take all these luscious landscapes. But at the end of the day, the photos that are personal usually aren't like that. It's of someone. It's of a body part. It's just the mundane things that you attach meaning to it that nobody else knows. And I guess it's a little bit of a secret. Like a secret between you and whoever's in this particular photograph. So I'm curious to know if you have a favorite photograph of yours that you have shot across all these years.
Well, I think I do have a few, thankfully, and I think one of those that I really like is an image that. Okay, so on 2022, I think February 14 on Valentine's Day. So I decided to tell my girlfriend, my partner, like, hey, you wanna just take a selfie, like just a very simple image. Like there's nothing crazy or there's no fascinating lighting and all that, but it's just an image of me and her sitting in the middle of my living room in my comfort space with the person I'm comfortable around. So I think I just wanted to eternalize that moment because it felt special and it felt better than any Valentine's Day gift, right? You're just, I'm so desperate to kind of like freeze that moment. So I told her, you know what, let's just do this year, and then we'll do it then every year after that. And I think if you look back, I don't know, maybe 15 years down the road, 20 years down the road, you just kind of see how you have grown, like literally as a person, or even the space around you when things change. And I think that has to be one of my favorite images I've taken. But it's on self-timer, so I don't know whether I took it.
What's that? Yeah.
I mean, you just set the camera on the self-timer mode and then you just take it. But I framed it, so I think I took it. But I didn't actually like press the actual moment. But that's one of the favorite images I've gotten. And of course, pictures of my mom. And but funnily enough, I don't when you ask that question, none of my commercial works actually came up to my mind. I think it's all very intimate things. And that's why I keep repeating that word, like intimacy. I think it's very important to me as a photographer. Yeah.
How is it something is it something you would strive to get better at? Or is it something just by the framing, the subject matter that you're looking towards? This idea of intimacy. How would you capture that as a photographer and as an image maker?
Oh, I don't know whether it shows in pictures, but I think when I photograph or when I decide to pull the trigger, I think it's that one moment where you feel like, okay, this is the right moment. And that's what I mean by intimacy. I don't mean it by how close the person is to the camera or what, but it's just that moment. I don't really know how to describe it. I think that's the beauty of it as well. Like, it's almost intangible. I think it's intangible, and that's why I keep a lookout for it, and when the moment comes, I just take it. Yeah, so I think it's very hard to come by. It's a very rare thing to feel that connection within that moment in time, and that's why I'm very hungry for it, almost. Yeah, if that's the word.
Yeah. So where do videos and videography, where does it lie in, I guess, your arsenal of tools to capture intimacy and to preserve it? When would you use a video and when would you use photo?
I think I decided to do the video for my father because it started out being a series of images, but I felt that as a series of pictures, it's not showing enough. So there's that one unique scenario where I feel that, okay, this is the part where I need to show people how much he's doing. And by saying that, naturally you would think that, I have to show everything, right? And to show everything, I think a series of pictures wouldn't really cut it because you're just showing people a fraction of it.
Yep.
And I don't really want people to imagine too much in that sense for that particular project. I wanted it to be very clear and like, this is what he does, and that's the amount of quote unquote sacrifice that he has to do, right? I mean, getting up at 4 a.m. every day and ending insane. Your work at 10 p.m. I think that's insane. So I think that's when I feel that a video will be appropriate. And I think that's and the funny thing is that the requirement for the brief was to do a video. So I have to do a video. But I started with a series of pictures. That's for sure. Like, I always start with images before I go into videos as well. Yeah. So that's the way I think and kind of sequence things. I think pictures always comes first.
I'm curious to know, what do you think is the uniqueness of the medium of photography?
Sorry, come again?
What is the unique point? What makes photography stand out as a unique medium as compared to, let's say, a painting, drawing, videography?
For one, I can't draw for nuts.
Okay.
So I think, well, I don't know what's so special about it, but I know that it's the ability to just create, right? I think as a person, I've always enjoyed creating things. Like, so I remember my mom still says this to me even now. She always said that as a kid, I was a fantastic artist. Like, I could draw very well, and my aunties and all my cousins would be like, wow, you're such a great artist. You're a fucking genius.
Wow.
But I remember none of that.
Yeah.
You know, I really remember none of it. Because when I hold a pencil or a pen now, I'm just like, oh fuck, I'm stressed. And all my storyboards and all my things are always stickman but you know, if it does the job, it does the job. So but I think what's fascinating about shooting is that I never have to stress about it, and I think that's why it's special. Because I remember picking out the first camera or like just roaming the streets in say Haji Lane again. I wasn't stressed out about anything. I was purely enjoying that moment, that process of like discovering or finding the right moment in the streets. So I think that's what feels special to me, that I wasn't very bothered by like technicalities and all that. Yeah, so when it comes to drawing or like say like picking up a guitar, I realized that I have to put myself in a different headspace, and that's when I start to feel a little bit more like stressed out or anxious.
But is it because you're uncomfortable and you're going out, I guess, of your comfort zone of being very technical and skilled with regards to doing photography? Yeah,
I think so. I think that's a good point, because if you are, say, learning to play the guitar, you have to go through like different kind of lessons or like chords and all that, right? I mean, I don't know, but I think you have to know the basics. And the same thing with photography. But I think with photography, it allowed me to just not really follow the rules. So I wouldn't say that I'm very good at the fundamentals of like your settings and all that back then lah. But now I'm trained for it, sadly. Yeah, but then I wasn't really obsessive about like what shutter speed and ISO and all that. I just wanted to take a nice image. So I think that the barrier of entry was a lot lower as compared to like say painting, because even though you could just draw, but I could clearly tell that I'm not drawing something great. So that's why I was like, okay, maybe this is not for me. But to take an image, I wouldn't say talented, but I could see potential in my own works back then. Yeah. So
now,
you fall to the whole idea of like comparing yourself to other artists and all that. So I do think I'm good where I'm at now, but I can definitely be better. So there's still potential, if that's the question.
But what does growth look like for you right now? Is it, as you mentioned, doing a more condensed and concise body of work and putting that out into the world? Or is it getting better at certain technicalities? Or is it getting better at the intangibles as well? What do you foresee or what do you perceive as growth? Yeah.
Wow. I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. I think technically, I mean, who doesn't want to improve, right? I think you always have to up your skill, and you always have to take your work to the next level. And that could be very like literal lighting and just knowing how to composite an image. But I think by growth, I just kind of want to feel happier with the works that I'm producing, right? And don't get me wrong, like I'm happy with my works now, but I do feel that there's potential for it to be a lot better. And by that, I mean a lot more personal and a lot more intimate, again, that word. So that's a struggle, because you have to do commercial works, and it's not a lot of people will pay for something that's very personal. So ideally, growth to me, if I could just sell a little bit of the intimacy, I think that would be nice. Yeah, but then the world just doesn't stop for you, so you just have to keep doing commercial works and just figure things out as you go. Yeah.
Are there examples of people who do commercial work but has that element of intimacy that you really like? Is there examples?
That.
Because I would imagine intimacy can exist in different facets as well. Yeah. Even perhaps through the lens of a commercial setting. So I'm curious to know, have you seen any examples like that?
Honestly, off the top of my head, I think, maybe the photographer that I talked to you about, like that guy that kind of made me question myself. That Emil Duck guy. I really think that, I mean, he's getting paid to do what he does. He's like shooting for times and all that. And I think people are paying for his perspective, right? Almost. And people are paying for his kind of sentiment towards things. So I think that's the ideal place to be in. So I would very much like to go towards that direction. And I think there are steps that I have to take that will be quite different from what I'm doing right now. So it's a matter of like kind of balancing. I do want to settle down in Singapore and just like have a normal family with my partner and just get a fucking BTO or resale flat and do the typical things. But there's also that side of me that wants to travel and do like photojournalism and just shoot actual fun stories that are very heart-wrenching or whatnot. So yeah, it's a struggle, man, trying to like figure out which way to go.
Where does the guitar play in all this?
The guitar? Wow. It was just a side thing that I really wanted to pick up. I mean, I've always enjoyed music, I think. And I think, okay, so I recently, somebody asked me recently, so if you're not doing photography, like what will you be doing? Right? And then I was like, wow, I honestly don't really know. And I don't even think that I have another hobby outside of this, which is very sad, right? Because
why is it sad?
I mean, I'm okay. So I started out with photography as my hobby, and then it kind of turned into my work. So I do have to wear different hats at different point in time. Like sometimes I'm doing it for myself for fun, and sometimes I'm working. But I do want to have an escape where I can just like do something else, and that's where maybe I can recharge my creative juice for, say, photography. So then I tried.
So someone suggested the guitar and you picked it up?
No, I think it was just it was just me listening to good music, and then I heard the strums. I was like, okay, actually, it doesn't sound that hard, right? Like, it's like, fuck. Yeah, it's actually pretty damn hard. I think the older you get, it gets a lot harder, right? I don't know the subject. Can you play the guitar?
So funny you brought up guitar because I'm learning as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think I started learning last year.
Okay.
And I would disagree with the notion of it's more difficult as you get older. I think picking it up now, let's say in my early 30s as opposed to let's say 20s, I think you're more, at least I find myself being a lot more directed with regards to how I want to learn.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
Instead of just learning songs, which I think it's good for a certain way of doing things. And when you ask people, how do you learn? They will say, learn your favorite song and everything, blah, blah, blah. Learn the chords of your favorite song and everything. But
that's what I heard too, actually.
But at least what I find myself doing, or at least what I did last year, is like, you can have ideas in your head, but you don't have the finger dexterity. So I think especially with instruments, you need to have a certain level of physicality to it. Like let's say for the guitar, stretching your fingers, like the dexterity to even play certain riffs and everything.
Exactly, that's what I can't do. I think.
Yeah, but that is the bar for entry. And
right.
The interesting thing that I realized a year on is just go for like 0.5% every day. Just do like you have to commit yourself to doing the sets. You have to commit yourself to doing like 10 minutes of this, like they call it a spider thing. The frets 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7. You just commit yourself. You watch a fucking video. Then you just do it. Yeah. So at least, as I said, going back to the point. So what I realized, like learning things in my 30s is like it's a lot more direct. It's less throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks. Which I guess it's good because you don't really have much time. Yeah. It's like, okay, you realize, okay, you need the finger dexterity. You need to memorize the different patterns. So you have to find your own way of learning instead of, learning the open chords, then going to the bar chords. Instead of like that. Yeah. So it's
definitely a lot more structured, right? Like you
have to find your own structure.
Right.
Yeah. You have to find your own structure. You have to figure out what works for your personality, your own personal schedule, and how you want to do things, which is good because if I can imagine, because the funny thing is that when I was young, being from a Chinese family, you got thrown to learn an instrument. So the instrument is the organ. the 2-layer electric organ. Okay. And I remember hating music because of that, because you're forced to do it. Yeah. You're forced to fucking go on like a Sunday. Yeah. To go and learn it, sit there for like 1.5 hours.
Like a recorder in school, right? Like yes. How you did it. I was like, my God.
So I guess learning as like a young adult, as like an adult, you get to dictate how you want to learn, what you want to learn. Yeah. Of course, perhaps let's say if you want to say you want to play at Esplanade, maybe the road is a lot longer. Yeah, you have to do a lot more to catch up. But I guess it comes with its own benefits if you're doing it just for fun. Really, literally for fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would add that it's also fucking painful to play the guitar.
Oh yeah.
Right? Fuck, man. Like I didn't sign up for this part. I only signed up for the it sounds nice and you look cool playing guitar, but not the my finger hurts part. So
I was actually surprised how just how much marks you will get when we're trying to bar. So it's funny because I went for like lessons of Carousel. So I found someone on Carousel.
Damn, on Carousel.
Yeah, it's like it's very fast, very efficient. So they tell me like this bar chord is like, so bar chord is like you're using your index to basically fret the whole thing. Yep. Then it's like, I was like, how the fuck do you do this? It's like, I remember when I first did this, it's so fucking painful. But then after a while, as you open a movie, watch the movie, you just practice all your skills and everything. Then naturally, as your finger dexterity will be there. So one thing I find very interesting compared to, let's say, like drawing or like, let's say like photography, it's like, you could do it mindlessly, like literally plug yourself in front of a video and just going through the motion. Yeah, which is a very different, at least for me, comparing it to drawing, it's very different.
Because you always have to be 100% like...
Not exactly as well. It's like, it's a very immediate, tangible benefit. Yeah. While let's say for drawing, it's not always that immediate. You always, at least for me, you have to feel around in the dark and you have to figure things out and you have to consider different things. But I guess it's also because I'm further along in the journey than the guitar one. So with the benefit of having a creative pursuit before, I'm just expecting the plateau. Like we'll reach a point where everything feels very stagnant. It's like, so I guess that also comes with learning things with age. Like you know that these things are coming. That it's like how you want to go through it, how much you want to hold on to this particular hobby. Wow. Yeah. Because I would imagine if you pass me a guitar at fucking 16, I would have no interest also. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a time and a place. You see something you really like, then you commit yourself to it, lor. Because you have that, I guess, that sense of maturity. You basically know how the world works. It's not like you're going to pick up the guitar and you're fucking good at it. You know how it works.
Wow, now inspiring me to go back home and pick up the guitar.
Yeah. It's, as I said, it really, really does depend. At least what I realized, it's fun now because it's more like, so I was studying, I had another musician on the podcast, Tim Dakota.
Yep.
And I was telling him when I realized how I can find the notes and it's a consistent pattern, and I realized, everything connects to each other.
Yeah.
That's like, okay, that's kind of cool because it looked very intimidating.
Yeah, right, for sure.
Yeah, I remember back last year when I was trying to even remember the chord shapes for the open chords and strumming, and there's a lot of things. But I think after a while, after sticking through it, at least at this particular point, when I realized, the sixth string and the first string are actually the same, the fifth is the eighth, and you can map everything.
Wow.
So now when I look at it, it's less intimidating.
Right.
And I want to get to a point where you can use it just as another form of expression. So you have to put in the groundwork.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think I kind of stopped right before that at the painful part. Yeah, sadly. But it's something that I'll definitely get back to.
You have to have fun with it.
I think yeah, if you're having fun, then the pain doesn't really feel that painful.
Or you watch a video, you distract yourself from it.
Yeah, man. But yeah, I think that's also why I picked up the guitar, because I've always been very drawn to music, and I think a lot of that has influenced my work quite a bit. Like,
what do you mean by that?
I think so whenever I'm shooting, I try to have music, like if I can. So say if I'm roaming around the streets, or say if I'm in the studio, I think the kind of music you play really affects the kind of images you're creating and the kind of ambience you're creating for the people that are there. So I think, but I'm definitely not going to perform the guitar for them on set. But yeah, I think
maybe if you get through this hum and you realize, you're actually like fucking talented at it. Who knows? Yeah. Who the fuck knows?
Maybe, right? Like some Jason Mraz or something.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So it's funny that you mentioned that music kind of informs your work. So I had a unique opportunity of accompanying you to a shoot of yours where you were preparing images for an upcoming production of yours.
Yep.
And one of the questions, so what I was there for is to observe how you shoot and observe how you conducted the shoot and to observe you creating the images. Because I think that is going to be the main gist of this upcoming podcast production of yours. Yeah.
Yep.
So one of the questions that I didn't include in this list, but I thought when I was looking at it, the choice of music informed, because I think you were playing like, I think Korean, is it Korean music? Yeah. So I was wondering, like, is it intentional?
It is. I think even that whole idea of that shoot, I think is basically an image of flower blooming out of a chest. So that was actually extracted from the song that I was actually very into at that point in time. It's this Korean indie singer called Daniel, and he has a song called Flower. So it's a very chill, not very K-pop like, kind of like just make a party kind of song, but it just sets you into this mood. And I think that might be the music that you were hearing. So I wanted to just kind of create the same kind of mood that I was feeling as I was ideating for that set of work. Right. So I wanted to put myself back into the same headspace. And that's why I played that music. And I think I wanted to see how the subject would interact with the song too, like how it made him feel. Because who knows, maybe if there wasn't music playing on that day, he wouldn't be lying as comfortably or in that way. So I always feel that I just have to create that kind of atmosphere or that kind of ambience for things to happen. And I would say that the music played a big part. But I don't know whether it actually did, but to me it did. So I think that's the important thing.
So could you take me through the process of you first interacting with the brief and I guess transmuting that to how you wanted to conduct the shoot and to shooting it?
I think when we first spoke about the brief, the theme chaos came up, and I think I really like the word chaos. I think it says a lot, right? I mean, the word itself is chaotic, so right.
Your guitar playing is chaotic.
No, that's more than chaotic. But yeah, so when I first, I had very literal way of kind of interpreting the brief. So,
what do you mean? Yeah.
I mean, I just thought, okay, shoot something crazy, like maybe people in the streets, like long exposure of people, just blurred people, and just making an image look very chaotic, very messy and disruptive. So that was my initial interpretation of it. And I think it's good for creatives to just kind of stay away from what comes to mind at first. I think it's good to just keep that in your notes and just like chuck that aside first and allow yourself to just explore a little bit more. So that's when I thought about the idea of chaos, not in the way the image looked like, but in the way I was creating those images, if that makes sense. So I wanted to put myself in an uncomfortable zone. Yeah. So I wouldn't say that I'm very informed when it comes to studio work or
interesting.
Indoor work. Yeah. I mean, I'm decent, but I'm not great at it.
Yeah.
And that's why I thought that, maybe I could try shooting this in a different way than I usually would. Because I would just hit the streets, right? And just get things that are very natural, very authentic, very, whatever I said earlier about myself, like I like things that are very real.
Yep.
But then what if I just put myself into the uncomfortable spot and just let chaos happen, right? Like internally.
So even the location of the studio was in effect because of the brief, because you wanted to try something that you're uncomfortable with. Oh, okay.
Sure,
okay.
Yeah. Then even the way I lit the image, I think, so, I mean, if I'm being more technical here, there are two ways essentially to light a set or an image, right? There's the strobes, which are flashes. So you fire, pop, then it just kind of hits. And then there's also continuous lighting, which is like your video lights is just always on.
Yep.
So I've always been using strobes, which is the first one. And I thought, okay, just to make myself feel a little bit more fucked up, why not just use something I hardly use for stills?
Yep.
So I got a friend, his name is Ting Wei, and he's a great friend of mine. I told him, hey, you, because you're very good at continuous lighting, I want to see how that would look like for stills. Yep. And he's never done it too. So I was like, okay, that's even better. Let's figure this shit out together and see how it looks like. So yeah, I think by chaos, it doesn't always have to be just like literally in the image. It could be in the way you're creating it. It could be the way you're feeling when you're shooting it.
Yep.
So I allow myself to kind of feel that way. And I think the music choice in which I kind of reference for the image, I think that feels like a very quiet and mundane kind of chaos as well. Like it's a very sad, and I don't know whether it's a sad song because it's in Korean, but it made me feel like, like agony, the despair and all that kind of, yeah. So I mean, just give it a listen, and I think it really feels that way for me. So yeah, even the choice of reference for me would have to kind of feel like chaos or chaotic. Yep. Yeah. So yeah.
Did you start the process with any sort of thumbnailing, or did you start with, because when I was on site, I saw that you had a mood board. So what usually informs your process? Do you start with just like for this particular one, were the images very clear in your head, or did you just have a mood board and you were just figuring it out? Yeah.
I think I'd say I had a mood board, and I think it's very important to have a mood board. I think that's the only thing I really do even when I'm doing like commercial shoots, because it's very important to know where are your bases, right? So that's the base that I need to hit. But if I cover that ground, I couldn't just do anything more than that. So naturally, the way I work, I always interpret a brief first, and I try to take away what's the most, how do I put it? I try to not do what I would. Okay, so the first response, I would usually just chuck it away. Yeah, and I just try and ideate and just diverge and think about different ways to approach the brief. Yep. And then once I get to there, naturally the mood boarding would come, and I would just want to see how people would interpret that brief as well. So I would just go on, I don't know, like pictures that I've saved on Instagram, or like books that I've at home. Then I'll just pick and choose like, does this make me feel chaotic? Or or does it not? Like, should chaos just be about chaos, or could it be about the other side of chaos where it's just peaceful and serene and all that? So that did pop up too. But yeah, I think once you have a solid base of images to kind of ideate on, then it's up to you lah, to like, oh, which element do you want to keep and what do you feel is kind of working against the brief? Yeah, say for the reference images. So you just construct your own image from there. Yeah.
Were there any ideas that you thought that you liked initially, but you had to put away because it didn't serve this particular brief?
I think, wow, there was a couple actually. So I had about 3 different ideas, and I picked the last one, which is the one that you saw me do, because that's the one that I didn't want to do at all, because it's studio. Yeah, because it's studio, and I had to like kind of show a portrait of a person, and I wasn't really feeling it because I was doing it a lot at work. So I kind of wanted to do something different. But I'm glad I made the choice lah. But anyways, the first 2 was, I think the first one was something that I would do in the woods. I think I talked to you about it as well. Like, I wanted to just...
Oh, the initial one, right?
Yeah, just head out to the woods, and I mean, I always run past that area, and I always thought that, wow, this would be a great place to shoot. But I never got a chance to, so I thought that was a good chance, right? But I don't know. That was one of the first few ideas I had, and I just knew
you were very close to doing it as well, right? So what changed there?
I think hearing that music changed. So hearing that song, and it kind of made me feel like chaotic in a different way. I know it sounds weird, but it was just late at night, and I was just hearing it like on the drive home, and you know how Spotify just recommends you songs, and wow, it always works, man. So when I heard that first beat, I was like, damn, wow, this is what the brief feels like. I just allowed myself to just follow that lah, and that's when I dropped you a text. I was like, hey, you know what? Let's try something different. Yeah, because otherwise I would have went with something a bit more direct. Yeah, there was also one where I just wanted to kind of go from a high vantage point and get people walking and just long exposure of all this blurriness and all that kind of mess in the image. I thought that would look great, like image wise. But I wasn't thinking too deep when it came to that. Yeah.
So what spoke to you about the idea that you went with? Well, was it just you felt very uncomfortable with it, and because of the uncomfortability you decided to just jump into it?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Like, I just didn't want to create something that I would usually do. I think that's the point of like this whole series, right? Like, we just want to do things that we've never done, or just do things that you never got a chance to do. And I think shooting with continuous light and all that for stills, like, it's not very conventional in the industry. People do it and they do it well, but I just never got a chance to, and I just thought that, you know what, I think that could be pretty chaotic by itself. Like, just figuring out whether it even works. Because if it doesn't work, then you know what's gonna happen on set, right? So I allowed that to happen, and yeah, I think that's why I chose to go with that. Because honestly, in my portfolio of work, I don't think I have images like that as well. Yeah, so.
And you had assistants on set as well. You mentioned your friend with regards to the lighting, and someone helping you with the I guess the other elements. So how did you convey like this idea or this set of pictures that you have to them so that they understand what you're going for?
I think you always need to have a deck, right? So that's also one of the things I start with, like, be it commercial work or if it's my own stuff, I try to at least have a deck, and sometimes it's just for my own personal consumption, because I do want to be able to look back and know, okay, this is why I want to do this project, right? I need to know what I started with and where it's going towards. So the deck is just a natural build-up of my thoughts. And it's almost like journaling. Yeah, you know how you do like journals in schools? So it's almost like that. So I just sent it over to my friends, and I told them, you know, this is the idea I have in mind, and I think that you're the best person for it, like for me. And thankfully they were like game to do it lah, and I think we'll have fun together. So, but it was definitely comforting as well, because it's very hard to, I think, it's very hard to find people that are like-minded, and you just need to make like weird sounds and people know what you want to do. Like you know, like the light just like come from this way, or like, you know, when these guys shoot from here or shoot from there, and then you can kind of visualize it. I think like outside of what we've done with this project, right? Like even if you're working on films or on film set, you just sometimes there are no words to describe things, but somehow creatives, they get it.
Okay.
And I think when you have people like that you can hit it off with, you just kind of keep them close to you, and they are the people that I will naturally go to again for future works as well. So, yeah.
Gotcha. So I'm very surprised to hear you mention about, I guess, how uncomfortable you are with regards to the ideation and the execution, because when I was observing you, it felt like you were in control. You felt like you were very methodical about conducting the entire thing. Like I think that was what I felt like, very methodical. You shoot a couple, then you will check something, you shoot a couple, you check it, you check your mood board. Like everything seems like, if I were to imagine someone not in control, that's not what I would see. Like if I was imagining someone chaotic and everything. If you mentioned that you were uncomfortable, I didn't feel it at all.
Wow, thanks. That's a compliment. No, I guess the fake it till you make it.
I guess.
No, because okay, that's exactly the point. I think if you're helming the role of the guy leading the project, then you can't panic, right? I mean, there were definitely times I felt like, wow, shit, maybe this doesn't look that great. What flower from the chest, like, you know? But then I think as we continue to shape the light and just play with the idea of posing and poses and how it makes you feel, then you just dance a little bit with the model, and then the image just comes out. And I think, yeah, I wouldn't say that I was exactly feeling great about the shoot though, because honestly it was quite tough. Yeah, because it's nothing that I've usually done, as I said quite a lot of times. So yeah, man, thanks for saying that it was methodical.
I wanna expand on that. So when you say that it's nothing that you've done before, so while you were shooting, or when you're shooting in more comfortable scenarios, can you always imagine what the end will look like? Is it something like that, so that you're very comfortable, you know, oh, it's gonna look like this. If I do this, it's gonna look like that.
Yeah.
But let's say for this, you were unable to see it.
I think, yeah, I think there's, when I'm in my own comfort zone, there's kind of recipes to like creating an image, right? It's almost like you're cooking. So I do try to visualize as much as I can, like what the end result would be if I'm working commercially. But I think for that specific shoot, because it's like lights I've not used before, like for stills, and it's also people that I've not really worked with together as a team before. So you never know.
That is surprising.
Yeah. So you see, I mean, so I work with them like individually, like Jingwei and Xuan. So and they are friends, but I've never worked with them together. So the three of us has always just been separate, like just working. And then so I thought that, you know, working together there might be new kind of like chemistry and synergy and all that. So yeah, I do think that it's great to be able to kind of get people on board to help you out, and just to vocalize your thoughts, and as you explain to people your ideas is kind of helping you give more clarity about what you're trying to say in the image. So yeah.
Okay, so before we go on to like the specificity of the different images, because I definitely do have questions. What I'm curious to know is, what importance does the mood board serve? Does it serve as guidelines? Because where do you insert your own creative spin on things while trying to balance out the look of how things look on the mood board? Where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line between, I guess, inspiration and I guess imitation? Yeah.
I think, wow, okay, if I see an image that I click with, I automatically just put it onto my mood board. Like I don't really think too deep. Yeah. Like I don't really scrutinize or like try and break down the image, which is what people would do. Like they would just see, oh, lighting from here, this from that. I just kind of keep a little part of that image and how it made me feel, and then I just throw into the mood board. And when I'm on set, I think the important part for me is whether the image I'm creating makes me feel the same way as the one I'm looking at.
Okay.
on the mood board. So I think that's why it's called a mood board.
Yeah.
Like not really like a pose board or like style board. So I'm not really supposed to like follow it exactly, but as long as I kind of nail the kind of feeling and emotion, I think I'm there. Yeah. So it's definitely just more of a guideline thing rather than like imitation, although I think that's a good way to start. Yeah, you always... Okay, so that's how I do it too. I think I would try to recreate the image I see in the mood board. But then I would then try to move on from there as well, because you don't want to just be stuck there, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So essentially that's it.
Yeah. So would you say that, let's say for these set of images, like going by that feeling has been helpful? Because I would imagine it to be quite subjective as well. But for you personally, was it helpful in just, I guess, trusting that internal feeling, and because you were taking more than one shot? It's not like okay, so is it normal to just take just one shot and it's done?
Well, I don't think that has ever happened.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, when I was thinking about photography, that's what I thought. So you were taking multiple shots.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious to know is, how do you know, like, okay, when it's done, and then you move on to like the next image or the next shoot in preparation? Because it felt like you were taking, then suddenly it's like, oh, it's done. Then you move on to the next one. Like there is no indication. Why not take 10 more? Why not take 20 more? Yeah.
I think it's I mean, it can get very technical, and it can also get very logical. I mean, the logical side of things is that I don't want... So I was training a model, right? I didn't want him to feel tired or drained. So that's why you have to kind of you have to see the bigger picture, right? He's got a few more shots to do, and you don't want him to be tired out from the first set. Yep. So that's the more logical way of thinking. But I think technically, if you know that this image is kind of sharp and it allows you to feel a certain way, like me personally as an artist creating it, then I think that's a good indicator of like, oh, okay, this is a good enough image. And I used to kind of seek for approval or like response from my team to kind of get a sensing of, okay, this is great. Yeah. So, but now I'm trying to not really do that, because that would, I mean, I realized because as I was assisting for other people, right, I would sometimes just want things to be over and done with, because it can drag a bit too long.
Yep.
So I learned to trust myself as an artist more than the people around me sometimes. So I think that's the hard part, knowing when to stop and also getting actual feedback from your team, like trying to filter out what's a helpful advice or like maybe what's not so helpful or what's not really up my alley. Then I'll just kind of filter that. Yeah.
What has been personally helpful to you in assisting you in trusting this internal feeling, like when you look at something and you know, okay, this is it, let's move on? What has been helpful to you? Has it just been experiences and just chugging along and going through things?
I think it's really just chugging along and just following through. And I think it helps when you are... Okay, so even when you're not shooting, I think it's great to kind of build on your whole like dictionary of like images, or your library, right? As they call it. So I try to always consume a lot of images, or like even just music or whatnot. So whenever I feel that, okay, this picture that I'm creating right now, it's making me feel a way that I felt before. Look, like I don't have to know exactly when, but as long as it kind of makes me feel a certain way, then I just know that, okay, it's good enough. So I don't try to like get too obsessive about details and all that. But I know that there are people that really thrive on that, and they're great at that. So
it's just a different way of seeing and creating.
Correct. Yeah, it's a different way of working essentially, because to me, so I try to be that one guy that that's very detail driven, but I realize that that's not me, because I would then start to feel a bit like, oh, but this looks great, but it doesn't feel great, you know?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a difference there. You realize that there's a difference.
Yeah. I think especially when you're shooting product images, like things that are very dead, it's very important to do it perfectly, because I mean, it's a product shoot, it's a commercial shoot. It has to look sharp, it has to look great, but it doesn't feel right, you know? So sometimes I try to take away that that hat that I'm wearing, that kind of like I need to feel everything. Because sometimes it just has to be sharp and it just has to look right.
Yeah.
So I think it's a constant like struggle to just figure which rubrics do I want to use to say, okay, this is an image that I'm happy with. Yeah.
Interesting. So the fact that it was a collection of, was it always intended to be, I guess, 4 images? Or were there iterations where it was supposed to be 3 or supposed to be 5? I asked because did the fact that it's going to be a set of images, did it inform and add to the concept as well? It allows you to spread out the different ideas of what it meant. So it allowed you to explore different things. Yeah.
I think I did see it as a very narrative driven kind of thing. I don't know whether people would see that way, but when I first started that out, I kind of wanted to start the image with the picture of a man with flowers coming out from his chest. So that's to symbolize the birth of like a new obsession or something like that. And then as the images go, the flower starts going, just occupying him and just devouring him, and that's why it's on his face and all that. And then as you continue to see the images, the flower starts to burn, and that's when you realize that things are going chaotic, and that would be, I'd say, the climax of a film or any kind of film. So then thereafter, you also have images of the flowers in the eyes, which is one of my personal favorite, because it's just this idea of keeping hold of something that's already gone, or you just wanting to keep something perfect forever.
Yeah.
So that was also when I was listening to a song called "To Let a Good Thing Die," and that's quite a classic, I think, for me.
Yep.
So when I heard that, and I felt that, oh wow, this actually is quite a nice concept to play with, and that's kind of like a combination between Daniel's Flower and "To Let a Good Thing Die" by Bruno Major. So I just wanted to see how these 2 songs would make me feel and how they would look like as a set of images. And I don't know whether the narrative actually came out towards the end of the project, but I do think that when I was shooting it, I had that idea in mind, and I'm happy with it. I think it was a fun shoot, and the pictures looks quite not bad. So yeah.
So was it always intentional to have a human element in it to portray this? Because there was a human element for, I think, the first 2 shots, and then I think there wasn't for the last 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's okay, so it's always great to be able to shoot a series of images that will work together collectively, right? But I do want to toy with the idea of like, what if I were to single out these images? Like, would they still look good by itself?
Yep.
So that's why I thought that, oh, you know what? Maybe some images without the human element, that would be kind of, it's almost like a B-roll in a video, right? Like, it's just a cutaway. And you don't always want to see the same person, because that will get a bit repetitive if you're talking like objectively. So I thought that would be a nice mix to the whole series of images. And I think also when you kind of put a face on the image, people might kind of disconnect themselves from it. I don't know whether it makes sense, because if you see someone else being in this scenario or image, you would just feel like, oh, that's that guy, that's not me, So I just wanted to draw the human element out from some of the images, and I think the picture of the flower burning, or just the eyes image, I think they made me feel a different way. And yeah, I think I honestly loved how these 2 images turned out, like, compared to the rest. But I think collectively they work great together. Yeah. So yeah.
Was there a certain emotion that you were trying to achieve going from, I think, the first picture of the guy laying to the second one? Because I think when I was looking at it, it felt a lot more personal, because I think you were going also a lot more close up to just capture the face.
Yeah.
And wow, the previous one, which is the first image, where it's a lot, how would I say, more it's a lot more observational. It's like someone walking by and just seeing someone
like voyeuristic kind of.
A little bit, yeah. So there's this. So what really stood out to me is how you created. Oh, it's gonna be 4 images, and it's gonna be like a it's like a moving story, like, basically. So from the first one, what happened to him, going to the second one, where I think it's a lot more like up close and personal. You see his features, you see like how his expression as well. Well, I think for the first one, you can't really see as much because it's a bit obscured because of his pose.
Yeah. I think that's exactly it as well. Like, I didn't want the first image to be too obvious, like who this guy is or what he's going through. That's why the flower that's in the image is actually, I mean, I had a talk with Shen, my art director. So she was saying that, you know, do you want a lot of flowers coming out of this guy's chest, or do you just want like a few? And I think even simple questions like that actually they would affect your images quite drastically, right? Yeah. So I thought that, you know, since we're at the beginning of it, like, let's just do with a bit less, and then as we kind of progress throughout the series of images, we can always add more in, and then that's when it starts to build up. So I think the word for me throughout the series of images is always longing. Yeah, that's the word that I was playing with. That's the word that's in my head as I'm shooting. So thereafter, I think the second image of him just kind of holding himself and just feeling a bit more vulnerable, I think I like that, because I think when you are that deep into something, you just kind of feel insecure, and there's no proper like ways of explanation of like why would someone feel insecure or whatnot, but it's just a way that I feel would make the image look good. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to see how a man would look if he's insecure, or if he doesn't feel safe and he just want to kind of hold himself a little bit, and that, yeah. And that's also when the flowers just start to like go to his face and devour him a little.
Yeah. So one thing that stood out to me was that I think your art director was painting the flowers. They're painting it red, I believe. Is there a particular reason why like this the red tint of the flower mattered to the entire shoot?
I think so the first few questions that she asked me when I first reached out to her, she was like, oh, so what kind of colors do you see? And I think that's a very important question, because I think colors says a lot, right? And I did tell her red because it's that color that's just striking at first glance, but it's also a symbol of, to me, like fear or things that are just negative in general. Yeah. So I could have went the other way of just like choosing more friendly looking colors and all that, but I did think that red would be a nice color to have in the mix. And that's why in the rest of the images, even a backdrop, whenever there's a backdrop or whenever there's any other colors to come into play, I go back to that color, because that's the base color. It's almost like a guide for me. And yeah, I just wanted to keep going back to that lah. And I think she did a great job. Like, she was the one that said, hey, you know what, actually I can try painting it. I was like, oh yeah, I think that's a good idea, so let's just try it. And yeah, I think it turned out great. Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, is it more difficult for you to shoot still life, or a photo with like a human element in it? Because you had two. The first two with you have a human figure, but the last two is more still life. It's just the object, the element, just like that. Well, you're not getting like a response, because I think you were directing the model, trying certain things. You get certain variations of it, but one of it is a block of ice. Yeah, the block of ice spins.
That was pretty cool.
But it is what it is. Yeah,
I think. Okay, so the question was, is it tougher to shoot either one?
Which one do you prefer?
I definitely prefer. Okay, if you ask me, I prefer shooting a person, right? Because then I could connect and I could just kind of bounce and see how he'll respond to my cues. And I think that's the best part. But if I'm doing still life, I do love making a nice looking image, and I think that's what still life photography kind of is, right? It's about composition, it's about lighting, and that's the aesthetic side of me, whereas the human part is that kind of connection and feeling and intimacy side. So I think that was a good balance, like as a whole. Yeah, so I definitely prefer shooting humans.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a lot more fun, and it doesn't feel as dead, because still life, you're just shooting
the block of ice.
Yeah, which I think was great. I think props to Shen. Like,
it felt cool, probably.
Yeah, she did a great job. Like,
when you whipped it out, I was like, oh wow.
Yeah, right. And it was just a wild idea that I had, and then so I guess that's what I mean by you just need to work with the right people, because I think just by a few lines that I sent her on Telegram, she could kind of like visualize, and she kind of knew what I wanted.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I wanted. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think my last question with regards to this particular shoot is, I think the idea of randomness and just letting things be. Because I think at a certain point with regards to the third and the fourth photo, you guys were burning it. You guys were burning the fucking pedal. You guys
just
were
doing weird shit.
Yeah, you guys were just doing weird shit. So how much of it was planned, or how much of it was just in service to get the mood or to get the image here?
I think, okay, so if everything is too calculated, okay, I would say that's a good way to make a good image, when you calculate and when you plan for it, right? You will never go wrong. So that's good. But I think if you want to make something great or something that's out of like what you would usually do, you just have to leave a little leeway to like just have fun and just see what the situation kind of provides you with. And I think while we were there shooting the last few images, I would say we were done. So we were kind of like, we had the shots that we needed, like based on the mood board. Like it felt great, and it's images that I would feel proud of, and I loved it. But I think I felt like there could be a little bit more randomness that I would just play with. Like, hey, what if it burns, you know? Or like, what if, I don't know, what if we crack the eyes and just see how the flowers look like? And sometimes things work and sometimes it doesn't. And I think it's okay. It's just a matter of trying. So I ended up really liking the way the flowers was like burning and the flame and the smoke, and so I went with that one instead of the safer option that we had. Yeah, so no man.
Because you can't predict how the smoke would trail up and how you would capture it as well.
Correct.
So it's totally random.
I don't even know whether the flower actually like burned the way I wanted to, and to be honest, it didn't really. But I still like that. It kind of surprised me, and I think that's the element of photography, right? Like you're always ready to be surprised, and you're just And I was just scared that the fire alarm thingy would just go off.
We were concerned. So did the final images, or the final images that you picked, was it close to what you had in mind initially? Let's say your thumbnailing, your initial concepts, was it close?
Wow, I think it's close, and it's even better than what I had kind of imagined in my head, right? Because like I said, this is something that's outside of my realm of work, right? So I wasn't able to really project or like visualize what's the end product. So I just kind of told myself, okay, you know what, let's just have fun with this. And then, but to be honest, I was quite pleasantly surprised. And I think it's all because of, I don't know, like that word chaos. I think I just didn't want to go with the safe route of creating. So yeah. I think it worked out them well. Yeah,
I'm glad. Thank you for the experience. Thank you for allowing me just to, I just observe and come up with just some weird questions. I still, the music, I honestly thought it was random. I was like, when I heard it, I was like, I wrote down, why this particular track? Yeah. And I was like, is that right? But yeah, cool. Good to know that info.
Okay, but I don't know whether like, I definitely started with that song, but I don't know where it went after that, you know, but I just kind of allowed it to shuffle and
but
all
I was
that.
just wondering, it's like, why this particular, I think track, and why this particular, just the vibe of the song. Yeah. So that was, I think, where a lot of my curiosity was, like just seeing you work.
Yeah.
And you work, I think, alone and as well as with them, and how just everything, as I said, was so methodical.
Yeah. Well, by methodical, what, like, do you mean like there's a structure to the way I was working? Like I shoot and then
it felt like everything was planned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like you weren't what's the word for it? Like you were just very confident. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to look confident. Okay.
All right.
But it was fun. Yeah.
Before we end, do you have any questions for me?
Well.
Or is there anything else you would like to talk about?
Not really, man. I think I've said a lot.
All right.
You've said a lot too.
So where can people find you online? What's your Instagram page? Do you have a TikTok? Yeah.
I'm still trying to get on the TikTok thing, man.
Okay.
Yeah, just find me on Instagram at Zac Tan, ZACTAAN. Yeah. Zac Tan.
Is that the actual spelling
of my name?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay.
My name is just Zac Tan.
Gotcha.
But I couldn't get a handle, so yeah.
All right, Zac. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the conversation.
Yep. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode and feel inspired. If you enjoyed what you heard thus far, do give us a follow on Instagram. And don't forget to share and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next episode.